And coming up on this week's show, is Virgin Trains about to make a comeback with a £500 million train order? Are passenger revenues and passenger numbers now on the rise? We speak to RAIB Deputy Chief Inspector Andy Lewis about the Strathspey and Talerddig accident reports. And the Elizabeth Line reaches 500 million passengers. So welcome to Green Signals from me, Nigel Harris, and...
from me, Richard Bowker.
Back online in every respect. Breaking news this week is that it's been reported that Sir Richard Branson's Virgin Group are close to signing a £500 million new train order to compete with Eurostar on high-speed services through the Channel Tunnel. It's been suggested that the deal could be signed early this year and services up and running by 2029. But you're not convinced everything is as straightforward as it might seem, Richard, are you? You're our go-to guy for Virgin matters.
You've got to love a Virgin story, haven't you?
Everybody always does.
I mean, they're the masters of feel-good stuff, announcements. But they're also, not averse to the occasional bit of misdirection, if that can give them a bit of a competitive advantage.
I mean, you would know. Right? You would know.
Well, when you look at this story, there's nothing bad going on here. It's just complicated, and there's quite a lot of unpacking to do.
Go on, then.
There's quite a lot of moving parts. So just summarise, right? So Getlink, which is the former name for Group Eurotunnel, who are the European public company that manage and operate the infrastructure of the Channel Tunnel. They also operate Le Shuttle. They're really keen to see the tunnel made available to other operators, apparently.
Hooray.
But it's going to be as a bit of a scramble because there's not that much capacity, if I understand it. So you probably can't have everybody who might want to go through it. So that's the first thing. So a number of companies have expressed interest. Obviously, Virgin Group. We've also got, I think you pronounce it either Evelyn or Evolyn, not sure. A big backer of which is the Cosman family, the Spanish family, who are a big shareholder in National Express Group.
Oh, right, okay.
And according to the Daily Telegraph, Evelyn announced in 2023 that they had placed a contract with Alstom for 12 trains to run the service. But then Alstom later said, well, actually, we haven't agreed terms and we can't commit to dates and so on and so forth. Then there's Eurostar themselves, who said, whilst they wouldn't ever try to restrict access to the facilities they use, there's no capacity at Temple Mills, which is where the maintenance is done in London, for additional operators to maintain trains there. So, sorry, chaps, can't do. And then you've got the ORR, who are obviously an access regulator in all this, who are looking to see whether that's correct about Temple Mills. And then you've also probably got SNCF and the Dutch and Belgians. It's a lot of moving parts in this, Nigel.
Indeed, but isn't it good to see finally some action on more use of the Channel Tunnel and more services? The bit I thought that was odd in the Telewag piece was Phil Whittingham, formerly of Virgin Trains and now a consultant to the Virgin Group, who was quoted in the Telegraph as saying, "We are hoping the regulator will determine what capacity is available and reserve it for a new competitor. And we expect the first person to come along with a contract for new trains will get that capacity." Seems a rather odd process of horses and carts and which order they come in, doesn't it?
It was a bit odd language. I think Phil was talking about Temple Mills, the capacity to there.
At the depot.
At the depot, thank you. Now, we spoke to the ORR. I've got to say, they're always brilliant at coming back.
They do.
I really appreciate that. They do. We asked them, is it correct that once the ORR have determined, because we know they're doing a study, whether there was sufficient capacity for others, whether it was okay for an operator to then say, so, quotes, "we expect the first person to come along with a contract for new trains will get that capacity." And the ORR, it was a very measured answer. They said, "We are currently considering applications from Evelyn and Virgin Trains for access to the Temple Mills maintenance depot, and are well aware of the wide stakeholder interest in development of the UK's international rail market. That is why we've appointed external consultants to provide us with an independent expert report on the current use of capacity at the depot. Our next steps will depend on the outcome of that capacity study. But then they went on to say this: as applicants' service proposals progress, they will also need, wait for it, to secure access to HS1, high-speed 1,
Yep.
associated stations, to the Channel Tunnel, to the relevant rail networks in continental Europe. The relevant licenses, safety certificates, and rolling stock authorizations will also be required. That is why we are continuing to engage actively with interested operators, affected infrastructure managers, and other regulators on the issues.
That sounds like a lot of red tape, Richard, to me. In other words, capacity at the depot may be the next critical path item, but there's still plenty of steps thereafter which will have to be resolved. So what have Virgin got to say for themselves?
Well, I think you're right, what you just said. I think the next critical path issue is to work out whether there's depot maintenance capacity. But then there's loads more to come. And the media team at Virgin, really responsive, as they always are, they gave us their statement, which says, it's a huge undertaking to establish a new cross-channel operator, but the route is ripe for change. We think Virgin's the right brand to signal a new era in cross-channel travel, given its award-winning experience in the train industry and track record for shaking up industries.
Yeah.
While Virgin is not committing to launching a service just yet, we're delighted with the progress made so far. It's too early to confirm further details about the service at this stage. For now, our focus is on bringing competition to the route, which will benefit all passengers in the long term. And then they say, applying for access to Temple Mills Depot, the only facility in the UK currently connected to HS1, is the logical next step in the process. So, as you said, we've been in conversation with Eurostar about access for some time, and we look forward to reaching an agreement in due course. Now, we are also talking to Virgin about seeing whether we can get somebody onto Green Signals to come and talk about this. I've got lots of questions. I know you will have. No one orders new trains unless you've got access rights to use them and everything
else. You'd be mad.
And I'm keen to understand how this is going to be funded, who's going to fund the trains, is it a lease, who is taking the risk, what's the apparent launch funding that Virgin needs, which the Daily Telegraph reported to be £1 billion. I mean, does that include the trains or what? There's a lot to unpack. It's exciting, it's interesting, but it's complicated.
It's also Virgin in classic disruptor mode, isn't it? It all sounds like Branson did when he launched Virgin Atlantic with British Airways all those years ago. It's that sort of feel and spirit to the conversation, isn't there?
There is. And do you know what, Nigel? There's a lot of people I know would say Eurostar, it started well, it's been good, but it's got expensive, it's got unreliable. Maybe it's got a bit comfortable. I don't know what your thoughts on that.
Complacent is the word you're looking for. And I think
it does need a kick up the,
I think it does need a kick in the ass. I remember a year or two ago going across to France and wanted to do Eurostar, and it was just fiendishly expensive. I ended up driving and using the shuttle. How stupid. So we'll do more digging on this, and hopefully we can come back to it soon, which with our joint interest and insights should make some good stuff. Hopefully Virgin will play ball and come along and chat.
Hope so. I mean, it's exciting. I mean, I love a bit of kind of, throwing a rock in the pond stuff, and there's probably nobody better to do it. Well, so let's see what they do. And
absolutely, and once you're sitting here thinking about the story, I'm thinking, well, why didn't they do it before? Because it is complacent, it is comfortable, it has been going on. I struggle with the idea of capacity issues at Temple Mills. I remember going to the depot when it opened, and HS1 isn't that busy, is it?
Look, I confess I'm not an expert, and I think the ORR are quite wise in this one to get an independent review done of it, because it will be, whatever the answer is, it's going to be controversial to someone somewhere. So yeah, I think they're being quite smart, and I personally wouldn't speculate. I don't know.
But there's no way Eurostar saying, yeah, come on in with plenty of room. Of course they're going to say it. Of course they're going to say it's full. Bugger off. All right, one of the things we said we'd have a quick look at early in the new year, late in the last year, was the recent ridership and revenue data published by ORR and GBRTT, which seems to suggest that a positive story is starting to emerge on post-pandemic recovery. We've always said that numbers are slowly creeping up, but what happened to revenues? Anyway, the data was published just before Christmas, so it's still relevant. Richard, you're our numbers guy, given my awful record with maths and sums and everything else. What's the headline message? Give us the bulk of you.
Well, the headline is great news.
Yay!
Okay? We know the number of passengers using rail has steadily been returning post-COVID,
Yep.
but the revenue in percentage terms was lagging behind that. And there's lots of reasons, work from home, commuting, not as much business use, economic downturn, whatever the reason, right? So it's been lagging. And it now looks like revenue is coming back more strongly. And clearly that's brilliant. I have to be honest, I did actually doubt whether I was the numbers guy after I'd read some of this stuff.
Well, if you're not...
It is fiendish in places, and I'm not going to bother explaining why. Well, I suppose I better just otherwise it looks. No, it's purely because there's a lot of estimation used, and a model called Lennon, and there's lots of factors and filters, and you name it, right? And it's actually is quite difficult. Now we mentioned ORR and GBRTT as the people that we were looking at the analysis of here. The ORR do produce a stream of regular industry data. It's really helpful.
They do.
But with the ridership data and the revenue data, GBRTT, the Great British Railways Transition Team, take it and apply a few more filters and analytical tools in certain respects. So you kind of have to look at both, which is really good. What we're looking at here is we're looking for underlying trends. Okay, that's what the game is here. And to do that,
the direction of travel,
but you've got to make sure
financially
you're looking at that over a longer time series, and that means you've got to compare apples with apples, right? Now, one of the problems with any revenue analysis is a small matter of inflation.
Okay,
so if I generate in my business £100 million this year,
right,
but it was 80 million last year, how much of the 20 million, right, is me selling more stuff, different kinds of stuff that were more expensive than the previous year, or the fact that prices have just gone up, a combination of everything, right? So if you're not careful, inflation can make it very difficult to compare apples with apples. So what the statisticians at the ORR and GBRTT do is they strip that out by making everything at sort of constant prices, i.e., July to September 24. That is the quarter that we are looking at.
Okay.
That's the numbers that came out in December. So everything is comparable. Everything's at the same price basis. The other thing they've had to normalize for, now wait for this one. If you thought that one was fun, this one's better, is the effect of London commuting and the Elizabeth line.
All right.
Now, what they've done is to remove the effects of the Elizabeth line and London commuting that is wholly within London. That's basically the M25, for want of a better analogy. Why? Because the Elizabeth line, we talk about rocks being dropped in ponds, that has had a major effect.
It was a big rock.
It was a big rock, but also, and this is where it gets really complicated, some of the services way back before the pandemic were actually operated by train operating companies or TfL Overground, and the central section didn't exist. Now it does exist, and it's changed all the journey patterns and the way that the data is captured, right? So they've got to take it out, otherwise you can't compare anything at all. So what's the headline? If you exclude all Elizabeth line and London commuting from both the pre and post-pandemic numbers, then we are now back to 89% of pre-pandemic commuting revenue. That of itself, that's good, right?
Yeah.
Now, the ORR say that if you add it back in, we are at around 86% of pre-pandemic revenue, and we are, of all revenue, not just commuting, and we're at 97% of journeys. I need to do some more analysis on that, because that's where it has slightly, I don't want to make sure I'm not confusing people, but the headline is on a like-for-like basis, so with the Elizabeth line and commuting stripped out, we're back at 89% of pre-pandemic revenue, which is good.
So not only are the numbers continuing to come back, the money's starting to increase as well now, the revenues, which has got to be brilliant news. It
is brilliant news. It's not 100% positive everywhere yet. So commuting is positive. If you look at the last 4 quarters, in all of them, the growth in ridership has actually been quite strong for commuting, but the growth in revenue has been even greater than the growth in ridership. That's why we're all getting a bit excited.
Okay.
Right? So revenue appears in commuting to be growing faster than ridership is, which suggests that the gap is narrowing. Right? Then that's good news. I should say, by the way, when I say growth, I mean year on year. So it's quarter 2 of 2024 compared to same quarter the year before. Yeah.
Blimey, I'm glad you didn't ask me to do all that. Is it not the case, though, that leisure traffic has also been booming over the same period? Because we've talked several times about this, haven't we?
Yes, it has. But interestingly, when you look at the last 6 quarters, it's only in the most recent quarter that I can see where the year-on-year growth in revenue has been greater than the growth in ridership. So actually in previous quarters, it was slightly lagging, which was what was causing the concern. But now it looks in the last quarter that for leisure, the growth in revenue exceeded the growth in ridership. So it's the same thing, gap narrowing.
So we're earning more pounds per unit, in other words.
Yes, the yield is better, right, per journey, if you like. Now, business travel remains a concern. It's more erratic. In the last quarter, journeys grew 13%, but revenue only grew 10%. So that kind of gap widened. However, it's actually the smallest segment is business. 238 million in July to September last year out of a total of 2.32 billion. So it's actually only 8%.
8%, okay.
Yeah. So again, it's kind of numbers and numbers and numbers, but business is the one that's a bit erratic, but it is quite a small percentage.
One of the things I did notice in the press release, in all that numbers, mass, is that in the same quarter in 2023, so July to September 2023, £96 million of revenue was lost to industrial action.
It was. And this is where it does get, you have to do lots of estimating. Industry uses a model called Lennon, which calculates the average revenue expected on any particular day and can also calculate what the average expected refunds are for any particular day. And you sort of combine the two and then compare it to what actually happened in reality.
All right.
Okay. So that is how the £96 million came about. It said, the model said it should have been this, and it was actually that. And the difference between those two was £96 million in September 2024 prices. So what GBRTT said in their press statement is, had that 96 million not been lost, but actually happened, the growth from that quarter in 23 to the quarter in 24 would not have been quite as good because you'd have been starting from a slightly higher base. Does that make sense? Yeah. So instead of it being 11% revenue growth, it would actually have been 7%, right? So in other words, don't get too carried away because that effect is there. But clearly, not having the industrial action effect in September 2024 was a really good thing. So I don't think anybody's really complaining.
I have heard of Lennon before. I wasn't too sure about what it did. Is that an acronym I'm not aware of?
Oh, don't ask me. I can't remember. We'll stick it on the website. I used to be able to remember.
Have I caught you out?
You have.
Imagine that. That's a joke, by the way.
No, look, it is a bit complicated. I hope that's explained it. Look, the back to, in the old sort of thing of tell everybody what we're going to say, tell them and then tell them again, the headline is it's good.
More bodies,
right?
More money.
There was a worry that ridership was coming back, but revenue was lagging because yield was dropping. And the last quarter, it does appear as if revenue has strengthened more than ridership has strengthened. That can only be good.
Well, let's have 3 cheers for that. While we're talking about tickets, just dashing off to the side somewhat, did you see the news that Heidi Alexander announced the latest great ticket sale, which had unleashed a wave of criticism on social media?
You sort of feel a little bit sort of sympathetic, don't you, sometimes? Because there must be somebody in government going, you can't do right for doing wrong, really. It was pretty strong, wasn't it, really?
Very consensual, or what was said.
Yeah.
Forget your silly sales. Just give us decent value all the time.
Yeah, I know. Five. Well, just trying to remember. I've got the numbers here. Actually, it was a lot, wasn't it? It was 2 million tickets, up to 50% off. So you've got till the 20th of January. So this show will go out on the 16th. So you've still got 4 days to go and grab a deal in the sale. I did exactly that this morning.
Did
I have
you?
to say it was very good value.
Was it?
So
What do you save then?
I got London to Newcastle for about £25, I think.
Oh,
so that was good in a fairly, in a relatively peak journey as well. So
that is
all
good,
good.
isn't it?
Yeah, happy with that.
Yeah, well, excellent. Jolly good. Right, let's move on to a really interesting chat I had last week with Andy Lewis, the Deputy Chief Inspector of the Rail Accident Investigations Branch. We said last year that we'd take a closer look at RAIB following the release of its final report into Flying Scotsman's collision at Aviemore on the Strathspey Railway in September 2023. My goodness, is it really that long ago?
Amazing.
So that's just what we've done. I spoke to Andy at some length earlier in the week, and he was very open and engaging and, didn't avoid any questions, which was really great of him. And we talked about the establishment of RAIB back in 2004, a long time ago now, and how they're working together with other agencies, and also in some detail about Strathspey and Talerddig. Because he says so many really interesting things, we're going to release the interview as a separate video on its own. It's that important, and we'll do that on Monday, the 20th of January. But for now, here's a taster of my conversation with Andy. Look, can we just look at one or two bits and pieces of current investigations, which I hope don't come across as carping at bits and pieces, but I'm genuinely curious.
Sure.
Strathspey and the Flying Scotsman thing.
Yes.
And look, cards on the table. I come at this from the point of view of an experienced steam footplateman who was first passed to drive in 1984 on the Lakeside Railway.
Yeah.
And then drove on the Great Central, our only double track heritage railway, for 15 years, which was very different, very demanding. So I do know a bit about what I'm talking about, I think. And that report surprised me a bit in how easygoing it came across, shall we say. I mean, for example, my view is the driver needs to be acutely aware at all times of his position and intention when shunting. And the very idea of saying, well, the carriages are never there, they're always somewhere else, I would expect to get my backside roundly kicked if I offered that as a genuine reason for running into a set of carriages. But it seemed to pass with not much comment in that report. It was, well, the carriages weren't in the same place, and it seemed to be accepted.
So obviously our role is to learn safety lessons from an accident, to look at what happened on the day and try and prevent it from happening again. So if you look at the Aviemore accident, there's a number of things going on. So it's an operation they've done before, but there are key differences this time. As you say, the carriages are in a different position. There's some ambiguity of roles, again, because there's other things going on. There are other people present who are not normally present during this move, and there's a confusion about who's keeping a lookout. And we're quite clear about the railway's rules in that respect, that they expected the driver to keep a lookout or to arrange for a lookout to be kept. But if you just stop there and say, well, the driver should have known, you don't really ask yourself the question, why didn't they know? And our job really is to get to these causes. I mean, imagine an RAIB investigation is essentially, the way I'd explain it, or it's been explained to me, is we've all been taught the fire triangle at school. And I'm sure my fellow engineers at home are going, actually, it's a tetrahedron, but we'll go with a triangle. And you've got oxygen and fuel, and you've got a source of heat or ignition. But if you take one away, the fire triangle collapses. And accidents are a bit like that. They're interlocking cause. It's very rarely just one thing. And in some cases, you're trying to take away, for example, error. It's not always error by people. Sometimes equipment fails. But if we talk about error, sometimes you might be able to take away the error, sort of the heat source, the ignition source, or reduce the opportunity. And that's what we're trying to do in RAIB. So in this case, we're looking at why a driver might not have known the coaches were there, because that helps us with the next accident. And in this case, there wasn't planning or briefing. People hadn't really talked about the operation in advance. people didn't really understand what everybody was doing, and they didn't have the situational awareness of where the coaches were. And that's actually what created the conditions for the accident. But if you
is
go...
that not the driver's job? So don't forget to listen to the full interview with Andy on Monday, 20th of January. It's really interesting stuff. What say you, Richard?
I thought it really was interesting. He said a lot more than I was perhaps expecting him to say. And as you say, goes into quite a lot of detail about how they do things, and those, particularly Strathspey, who went through that in a lot of detail. So, yeah, definitely don't miss it. It's a good one.
And a very smart RAIB branded shirt. Maybe we should do some green signals shirts.
I thought you were about to say a very smart interviewer, but there you go.
Well, that goes without saying.
Oh, well, that goes without saying, right? Yeah, very good. Anyway, actually, talking of smart things and good things we've done, I've got something exciting to share.
Hooray!
Yeah. Regular listeners may remember that Steph and I went off to North Wales at the end of last year. It was in November. We went up to Snowdonia to a place called Bala, where there is a beautiful little railway called the Bala Lake Railway.
Isn't it just?
It's also a project that is really quite something, because they're building a new bit of narrow gauge railway. And in classic fashion, it's not really it's not just a railway. It's all about economic regeneration and community development. It's actually amazing stuff. Anyway, done the video. It was quite the edit, I have to say, because we had so much great content and also a lot of footage that was including drone shots and everything. Anyway, we've done it and we're nearly ready to share it. So I thought I'd share a little teaser of that as well. So here it is.
For the last 45 years, the Bala Lake Railway has terminated about a mile outside the town of Bala. There are no facilities, no car parking, and those visitors that wish to travel by train from that end have got quite a walk. And so what we spent the last 10.5 years doing is to work up a project whereby we can extend the railway from its present remote terminus right into the centre of town. We've bought land, we've leased land, and we've done a lot of the preparatory work. And after all this time, the pivotal thing is we now have planning permission to build this new railway, and it's a new railway, not the restoration of an old one, 1,200 yards into the town, and that will deliver and dispatch the visitors from the centre.
So just give us an idea of cost then, because I suspect 1,200 yards of new railway doesn't sound much, but these things are expensive and for understandable reasons. What sort of cost are we talking about? And I suppose where's the money going to come from?
Yes, the cost is pretty eye-watering. It's going to be in excess of £5 million. £2.5 million of that, incidentally, is going to be the building of a new station building. And that will have a cafe, it will have offices, it'll have a tourist information centre and new public toilets in it. And that will be the centre. The rest of it is building the formation itself. We're in a very sensitive environmental location, and an awful lot of care and attention has got to be paid to how we build the railway, and that is where a lot of the cost is going to go. But no, you're right, it's not going to be cheap. But raising the money, we've been incredibly lucky. Until now, we've raised 1.6 million, and the majority of that has come from all over the world, from private donations, from as far away as Australia, South Africa, the Middle East. So such is the support for this project in the heart of Snowdonia. We've also had tremendous support from NRS, Nuclear Restoration Services, who are investing in local communities as they decommission a nuclear power station. And we are incredibly grateful to them for their support, because it must be appreciated, up until now, everything has been speculative. Because we hadn't got the planning. Now we've got the planning, we can move forward, and everything, what happens now is definite.
Now, one of the lovely stories I heard about.
Well, how about that? I thought I had absolutely nothing to do with this project, so it means I can say quite hand on heart and in as neutral a manner as it's possible to be. I think you and Steph did a brilliant job on that. I think it's a real high watermark in terms of stuff that we've produced. It is a genuine documentary, which I think is of, in many ways, broadcast quality, and the drone stuff and the animations and the maps, which Steph did as well. It's just brilliant. And if the Bala Lake Railway aren't absolutely delighted with that, and you don't get the keys to the town, then there's something wrong, because it is brilliant. And what I absolutely loved about it was a bit like the Transport for Wales thing. You start to realise how out of touch you are with some of the things that's going on, or how good people are getting at keeping quiet about stuff until it's ready to be talked about. But the sight of that flood defence with the railway in place, on the top, ballast down, ready for track, is just astonishing. That degree of, interagency working, and the heritage movement working with organisations which, frankly, are not always that easy to work with, is just fantastic. And it's going to be great to see that, because it's not just a relayed bit of railway. It is new formation. It's new route,
brand
isn't
new.
it?
It's brand new. And it will be amazing for not just the railway, but the town and the community, as you will see if you watch the whole film.
Well,
So
the mayor
really
and
good.
everybody else there. But it has to be said, the Bala Lake Railway is very fortunate to have Julian Burley at the helm, isn't it? Who's
it does.
For whom the words class act, capital C, capital A, I think must have been written.
I would completely agree with that. And as we always say, it usually comes down to the people as much as anything else. But there you go.
All these things, and whether it's Transport for Wales, whether it's a Stiniog Railway, we've been lucky enough to stand back and say that person is a fantastic leader.
Yeah, agreed.
So well done,
Anyway,
Julian, and well done the team.
Thank you. And it is coming out on Tuesday, the 21st of January. That's when we will hopefully publish Bala. That's the plan. And that's
going openly. It's not a members special. That's for everyone.
No, that one we will put out to everybody. We just think that is such an exciting project that the world needs to see it. Right.
Time to thank everyone who's left us a super thanks on YouTube this week. And you lovely people are Paul Roberts, Alan Kirkman, Bob Walsh, Nigel Mapston, Graham Webster, Adrian Headley, John Coates, Chris Exley, and Marion Bloom. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts, from all three of us, for those super thanks. They do help a lot. So thank you.
Yeah, indeed. Thank you very much. And thank you also to our new gold and silver members, who are Andrew Seddon, Mad About Trains, and Andrew Franks. You can see all our members, gold, silver, and bronze. And we're grateful to everybody. In the end credits, we list everybody. My usual plea, if you're a gold and silver member, please do send us your address if you've not yet done so to info@greensignals.org. I've been sending loads of mugs out, but I think I'm now at 15 that are due to go out, but can't because I haven't got addresses. So please do that, and then we can get your mugs to you if you are a gold or silver member.
I mean, that's our quiz winners mug, but the members mug is even classier, isn't it?
It's very nice
and very pleasant. And now it's time for this week's Railway News Roundup, which we always enjoy, and some quite extraordinary numbers in this one. The Elizabeth Line. And when you think how much fuss about should we build it, is any use for it, and all the rest of it, has reached 500 million, that's 500 million passenger journeys in its first 2.5 years, making it the single busiest railway service in the kingdom. A new series of reports on the line has assessed the key outcomes, benefits and insights about the new line to get an idea of how it's performing and to increase confidence in future transport investment in London and elsewhere. More than 90% of the people that were surveyed as part of the evaluation study said that the line has had a positive impact on their area. There are some great signs of the impact it's had on employment opportunities as well, with an 11%, a real bump, increase in access to jobs around the Abbey Wood branch and 6% along the Heathrow Terminals branch. Lots to talk about here, Richard, isn't it? What a great success story that is.
It's wonderful. And we are going to talk a bit more about it because in the lead up to the spending review, there's going to be a big light shone on what's the not what are the costs of these transport projects, what's the consequences, what are the outcomes. And Crossrail and the Elizabeth Line demonstrate that they are colossal, right? I mean, nobody talks about the cost of the Crossrail project now, literally no one. And it is a remarkable piece of infrastructure and economic transformation. So yes, we will be talking about it and doing a deep dive and looking in the numbers because, as you rightly said, Nigel, they're big. Everything about the Crossrail Elizabeth Line is big. Now, moving on to Network Rail. They have begun making preparations to replace a 71-year-old bridge, the Clifton Bridge in Cumbria. But it's quite complicated on this because it takes the West Coast main line over the M6 motorway. The bridge has apparently reached the end of its life. It needs to be replaced. It's going to cost 60 million quid, but it'll make a big difference because currently only one train at a time is allowed on the bridge.
I did not know that.
Yeah, I did not know that either. And that obviously causes capacity management issues. And
what a challenge for signallers and controllers as well.
Yeah.
To
there can only be one.
Flight the trains accordingly to make sure you've only got one at once.
One train in section, yeah. So this time next year, the railway will be shut for 2 weeks so that the bridge can be demolished and replaced over 2 weekends. But I know that bridge. I've driven under it on the M6 and driven over it, gone over it on the train. So, yeah, it's a big project, that.
Dare we mention, is it going to be buses or diversions? No, we'll move on. Another HS2 construction update this week. The giant box structure that takes the railway under the A46 is approaching the final stages of its construction. The 14,500-ton box structure, I love all these numbers, in Warwickshire is being built on land next to the road rather than beneath the carriageway to minimise long-term disruption. 120 gigantic concrete beams have been installed, ranging from 13 metres to 24 metres in length. They form an integral part of the top of the box, and finishing touches will now be completed during the deck, including the deck and installing parapets. The whole thing is due to be completed later this year, and at no point were any double-decker buses or Olympic-sized swimming pools harmed in the making of this story.
But you love these, don't you? Because it's just like with the HS2 numbers, it's just everything's just huge.
Yes,
yeah, it's fantastic. Southeastern has announced a major upgrade of its Class 376 fleet. It will involve what they describe as an interior and exterior midlife refresh of all 36 of those Electrostars. They're doing it in partnership with Alstom and Eversholt Rail, who are the lessor, the Roscoe, and there'll be lots of modern upgrades. I was just looking at the list, actually. We've got USB, power sockets, energy-efficient LED lighting, all the stuff you'd expect. The upgrade's been carried out at Ashford Maintenance Centre, and the first to receive a new blue livery, actually. That'd be interesting. And LED lighting are expected to be in customer service in the spring. The interior refresh will start later in the summer at Grove Park Depot, and the first refurbished units are expected to be in service before the end of the year.
I don't know about you, Richard, but these stories always make me feel old. Where first of all, you hear that the Pendolinos are at the midlife overhaul, and now another fleet at midlife overhaul. All fleets that I went to the introduction of are now midlife. Oh God,
I know. It's not great, is it?
So thanks to Paul from the independent Brigline Rail Group for sending us this one. We spoke on the show a couple of weeks ago about the never-ending battle the railway seems to have with road vehicles clobbering bridges. This week, Network Rail is urging drivers to check the height of their vehicle, which is a legal requirement in the cab, after a bridge in Birmingham was hit 3 times in less than a week, including, wait for it, twice on the same day. Am I allowed to say FFS, Richard?
Well, I've got to say, I saw the Network Rail press statement on it, and that is the closest I've ever seen to a public body actually say something pretty much along those lines, yeah.
On January 7th, Erdington Bridge on Summer Lane was hit just before 10 o'clock. The green light was given to safety reopen it, and then it was bashed again at 10 past 12. That second lorry had its trailer roof ripped off, shame, and that was left hanging up. Sorry, did I say that out loud then?
You did.
And that was left hanging over the road. The same bridge had already been hit on January the 3rd. It is literally unbelievable. Drivers are supposed to know by law the heights of their vehicles.
I'm only laughing because I'm just at you, but it's absolutely ludicrous, isn't it? So.
Also, and laughs and exasperation apart, if you're on a train and you're suddenly told that you're sitting there for 2 hours because there's got to be an inspection on a bridge, it is enraging.
Yeah, I know.
Also, just worth slotting in here, Richard, the news broke just before we recorded this show that 50,000 journeys, 50,000, have been made on the Northumberland Line, which I'm definitely now going to use all the time.
It's not called that. What's it called?
It's called the Northumberland Line in Nigel's world.
Yeah.
They like to call it the Northumberland Line, which is very... Anyway, in its first month, 50,000 people in a month. Now, 3,500 of those were on its opening day in December 15, so there's a few Grisers, Linesiders and well-wishers, obviously. More than 16,000 in its first week. That, however you slice and dice it, is a sensational start for the Northumberland Line. Keep it
Still
going.
costs 300 million quid, though.
Oh, stop. Yeah, well, all right. They're going to get it back faster then, aren't they? If
all right, I'll give you that one.
No.
I think this was a good one to do, so I'll give you that.
Sorry, we say that again. It was a good railway to reopen. Were you
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I said that on the show when we talked about it.
I just like to hear you say it again, that's all.
All right, get on with it.
And that's the news roundup for this week. If you'd like to send us any snippets, big, small, local, national, wherever, please don't assume we pick all this stuff up, because we don't. And if we use what you send us, we will give you a name check on the show, as we did for Paul from the Brig Line.
Absolutely.
And keep the tips coming. Where do they send them, Richard? Remind me.
It's news@greensignals.org.
News@greensignals.org.
It just helped. We get unbelievable numbers of emails now. I mean, it is really quite. You get through them, and then the next day you go, oh, heck, it's full again. So it just helps us keep them in a bit of order. Yeah,
but we love the engagement. Because
we do.
There is an old saying in the old print media, that any magazine or newspaper is only as good as its letters page, because that shows the engagement. So the fact we're getting all that engagement, thank you so much. Please, we love hearing from you. Keep it coming. Don't let Richard whinging about it put you off.
No, on this occasion, he's absolutely right. Please keep them coming. It's brilliant. It's now time to do the quiz.
Yay.
Right. Last week's question was this. What do the following stations have in common? And they were Old Roan, White Hart Lane, New Cross Gate, and Blue Anchor.
Never even heard of Old Roan. Sounds
Old Roan.
Sounds like a real ale.
No, it's on the Liverpool to Southport line.
Never
it's
heard
near
of it.
McGull or somewhere it's in north of Liverpool. Yeah. We had some brilliantly creative answers. One guy gave us a fantastic, almost essay on heraldic designs.
Wrong, but interesting.
Oh yeah, it was really interesting. It was wrong, yeah, but it was great. The answer is all those 4 stations were named after public houses. They were named after the pubs adjacent to this. Yeah, all 4 of those. Quite a few people got it. And the winner, randomly chosen from all the correct answers we had, was Dave Harris. So well done, Dave. Send us an email to quiz@greensignals.org with your address, and we will get the aforementioned mug off to you.
Railway audience get pub question right. Shocker.
Fair point, right? Right. So I'm going to try and make the quiz maybe a little easier for some, because I've had a hard time from Nigel mainly about that. So
Steph, she also made the same comment.
That is possibly true. That's true, but you're here now, so I can say it. So this one is, I hope, a bit easier. What's the railway connection between Dick Turpin, the Prince of Wales, and Doncaster?
I might even hazard a guess at that, but I won't.
See, I thought you might get.
I won't blurt it out just now.
Good. If you think you know, as well as Nigel, answers to quiz@greensignals.org by midday on Saturday, January the 18th, and we'll put all the correct answers in a digital hat and select a winner at random. So that is Dick Turpin, Prince of Wales, and Doncaster. What's the railway connection?
And a mug will head your way.
A mug will be yours, yes. If you win.
Well, yes, indeed. Here's a great little story for us to end on. TransPennine Express has launched a free virtual work experience program to give anyone interested in a railway career the opportunity to get a behind-the-scenes look at the industry. The course provides an insight into what it's like to work at the TOC, including how timetables are put together, what it takes to keep trains running smoothly, and what working in front-line roles such as station assistants and onboard catering is like. The course has 8 modules that include hands-on activities and core employability, that's a good word, employability skills, and can be completed at your own pace.
That'd help you, wouldn't it?
It would. I never used to like that with exams. There's some invigilator walking around and you were aware they'd stopped behind you, were reading over your shoulder. I used to hate that. The programme is apparent, and then you'd hear them tut and walk on. You think, well, what have I got wrong? Completely shattered your confidence. Anyway, back in the real world, the programme is apparently open to anyone aged 13 or over and will run until May 5th. We'll put a link in the additional resources section on our website if you'd like to find out more, or if you've got youngsters in the family who might want to know about the railway. I think that's a great thing to do.
I think that's absolutely brilliant, and well done, TransPennine Express.
Absolutely.
Work experience is really important, and that's cracking. It's great.
And sadly, that is all we've got time for this week. Thanks ever so much for watching or listening. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up on your chosen provider of choice or YouTube. Leave a comment, and if you haven't already, subscribe to the YouTube channel. And if you really want to support us, find out about membership on YouTube or Patreon, and you'll get all sorts of cool free vids and stuff in advance. But this show will always, of course, be free, so you do not have to pay to listen to Richard and I opine, another good word, on the state of the network. Most importantly, please join us again next week. We always look forward to your company. So it's goodbye from me until then, and
it's goodbye from me.
Have a great time. See you next week.